Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I warned you I will be bouncing around between holidays and seasons, so today I'm going to share some Christmas cards. I'm using the Magic of Christmas, which is an exclusive Love From Lizi 8x8 paper pack, and then also the Magic of Christmas coordinating stamp set. These were both part of a kit used in Lizi's class at Stamp Junkies earlier this year. We're very lucky that Lizi decided to offer the paper and the stamps in her online shop. I do show a detailed look of the paper pad in my recent unboxing video. I will provide a link in the description box if you want to check that out. What's really nice about this paper pad is the variety of pattern papers, specialty papers, and stickers included. The paper pad is available to purchase individually or as a bundle with the coordinating stamp set. I love to add matted layers to my cards, so I did include some solid colored cardstock and of course Love From Lizi peel-off stickers. But now let's go ahead and get to my cards. So with card number 1, I'm using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches. This is number 229. I have some beautiful pattern paper for the background with lovely foil accent on it. I used some of the mirror gold cardstock that's included in the paper pad and just have that thin strip on that left hand side, and then I did add just a gold peel off on each side just for a little extra interest. I cut out 3 squares, used some of this cardstock, which is just some colors from my stash, and then I stamped out one of the sentiments that's included on the stamp set. Used some Versamark ink so I could heat emboss it. I'm using the Golden Crown embossing powder, and this is from Love From Lizi. So I'm going to go ahead and layer that on one of those squares. And I'm trying to just line them all up so they're in that perfect sort of a V form, just like on the sketch. And I decided I'm going to pop all 3 of those squares. So I'll just make sure that sentiment square is straight on the card, and then I can get the proper placement with those other 2 squares based off of that first one. So get some more of the foam tape, and I do apologize with the really strong light reflection off of all of this shiny paper, and unfortunately you're going to see that quite a bit throughout this video. I really need to change the placement of my overhead lights. So for those other 2 squares I used some of the gingerbread stickers. I have the little girl and the little boy, and then just to finish off this card, I'm just going to add a couple of these enamel gold dots that I had in my room. So that is card number 1. So now moving on to card number 2. This is Freshly Made Sketches number 390. For the background paper, I'm using one of the pattern papers that has all of these fun designs just in this green print. So it has trees and candy canes, stars, and the little gingerbread. And then I'm using some more of that mirror cardstock, just that thin strip on the left hand side, and then just putting one of the peel-offs. So I use a variety of different peel-offs throughout this video. I will add a link in the description box for the huge variety of peel-offs that Lizi sells in her shop. And then for these 2 little banners that are below the circle, I'm just using some pattern paper. One of them is pattern paper, and then the other is just this light green cardstock. Just cutting some fishtails on one side. I decided to need another peel off, so I'm using my favorite peel off, which is the clear gold mirror peel offs. I'm just putting one of them at the very bottom edge of each of these little banners. Then I'll just trim off the end of it, and I noticed my one piece wasn't quite long enough on this green cardstock. Always a good idea to save those tiny little pieces of peel-offs because they do come in handy at one point, especially for something like this. So I'll just use some ATG and attach both of those to that lower right hand corner of the card. And now I'm going to do some more heat embossing. This time I'm doing it on a circle die cut, and this is actually on top of some white pearlescent paper. So I want to make sure I get a really good impression, because sometimes I notice when you stamp on pearlescent paper it doesn't really take. So I'm going to use my mini MISTI, and I do keep the piece of paper where I cut out those circles because it's very handy to attach it into or lay it back into the MISTI and then just use some washi tape to make sure you get it all lined up again. So I'll be using the Golden Crown embossing powder again. I'm going to use this quite a bit since it matches just perfectly with the pattern paper. So there's that beautiful shine. Go ahead and layer that on some green cardstock. And then I'll pop that up using just some thin foam squares this time. And for anyone who is watching that attended Lizi's class, you've already seen all of these cards because I did make some card samples using this kit for Lizi to have at the Stamp Junkie class. So to finish off this card, I added a couple little pearls in that lower right hand corner. So that is card number 2. So now moving on to card number 3, I'm using a sketch from OWH. This is number 44. For this card, I'm using my favorite pattern paper, which is this triangle geometric pattern with the gold and the pink. I think it's so beautiful. The background paper is this pre-embossed cardstock. I believe it's from Basil. I added a strip of this gold mirror cardstock that's included in the kit just down the center of the card. And then I'm going to use some of the Sway red mirror peel-offs. I'm having that wavy part facing outward, and I don't need to use a full peel-off since most of it's going to be covered up. So that's always something to think ahead, especially with peel-offs, because they're very precious and you don't want to waste any of them. So now I'll go ahead and attach this pattern paper rectangle. So you can see how very little of the peel-offs show, but it still adds this beautiful color and shine. So I'll put my card front onto a card base. And then I do use some of the pattern paper, those thin strips that are always left over. I like to add them on the inside of the card just for some extra detail. And now I pulled out a couple, well actually this is just one of the stickers. I'll use another one in just a little bit. This is one of the little images of an angel blowing a trumpet. So I am going to go ahead and pop her up using some foam tape. And I could have used some anti-static powder to remove all that stickiness because it is a sticker. But since I'm covering the back very completely with all of this foam tape, I think it's fine. None of those little edges are going to bend over and stick to the card. So for the sentiment, I'm using another one of the stickers, and this time I'm just laying that one directly onto the pattern paper. And for a finishing touch, I'm going to add some gold sequins, and I pulled these out of one of Love From Lizi's mixes. Can't recall which one it was. She's had a lot of them that have gold, but I only wanted the gold, so that's why I was very specific to pull out just this color. Got a couple different sizes, so I'm just putting a few of them around the top and bottom corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 3. And now moving on to card number 4. I won't be using a sketch this time, and overall this is a very simple card, but it has a lot of beautiful shine. So I have the vellum paper that has beautiful gold foil on it. And then I cut out this stitched rectangle frame using some more of that gold mirror paper. And since vellum is always tricky to put adhesive on it where it's not going to show, using this larger stitched rectangle frame was super useful. So I just put the adhesive behind the frame so those very edges don't have any adhesive, as well as any of the middle of the card, but it's still going to stick to that card base just fine. So for the sentiment, I'm using an oval die cut this time, and then I also have that scalloped oval cut out in the mirror paper. I'm using the Silent Night stamp, and I'll be heat embossing it with some more of the Golden Crown embossing powder. And again, I do have this on some white pearlescent paper. I love just all of this extra shine, and this card is full of shine and sparkle. So once I get all of that heat set, I can attach that to that gold oval scallop. I use a lot of adhesive just because it was heat embossed, so it does warp the paper just slightly. And I'll pop that up using some foam tape. And I'm just going to put it off to the right hand side. And then just to finish off this card, I'm going to add some more of those gold sequins. So I have a couple of them going in that upper left hand corner, and then just 2 of them kind of snug up underneath the sentiment. So like I said, very simple card, but with all of this shine, I think it's plenty. So again, I do apologize about that horrible reflection from my overhead lights, but you can see the real effect on all of my still photos. So now moving on to card number 5, I'm using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches. This is number 207. This is a great sketch for combining several different pattern papers or finishing off some of those small scraps that are left over from a paper pad. So for this card, I wanted to use some of the green pattern papers. So I'm matting it in this darker green cardstock, and then again on some of the gold mirror paper. If I thought ahead, I really should have cut out some of the middle of that gold mirror cardstock, because I did run out of this paper and had to include some more that I already had in my stash, because I love a specialty paper, so I always keep some extra on hand. For the sentiment, I used one of the stickers and I just put it on top of some of the gold mirror cardstock, and I'm just doing a fussy cut, just a thin little border all around, just to add a little extra contrast. And then I'm going to pop that up using some foam squares. And then just to finish off this card, I'm adding a small little banner in that upper right hand corner, again using some of this gold mirror paper. Can you tell I like the gold mirror paper? So that is my finished card, and that is card number 5. So moving on to card number 6, this is a sketch from Simply Stamping Challenge. I'm not sure of the number because it's not listed on there at all, but I do have a direct link to all of the sketches that I use on my coordinating blog post, and that link is in the description box below. I chose a very muted pattern paper for the background. It has this green writing on it that you can't really read. It's just more for the look, I think. And then I have some more of this green cardstock for the strip going on that left-hand side, and I'm just using some of the peel-offs, the gold clear mirror peel-offs on each side, add some extra shine. And then I have the pattern paper with the gold snowflakes, matted all of that in the same green cardstock. I'll go ahead and put my card front onto a card base. And then I'll just add that thin strip of pattern paper on the inside of the card. And for my sentiment, I cut out a stitched square die cut, and I will be heat embossing using the Golden Crown embossing powder again. Use the Silent Night sentiment, so make sure to get it nice and straight in my mini Misty. And I do use some of the anti-static powder first. Then I ink it up using the Versamark ink, and I usually ink it at least twice just to make sure I get a good solid impression. Sprinkle all that beautiful embossing powder on there. Wipe away any little strays. Then I'll get out my heat gun. It's always fun, no matter how many times you do it, it's so fun to watch the magic happen when you melt all of that embossing powder. I love this beautiful color. So I use lots of adhesive, layer that on some more of this green cardstock, and then I'll pop it up using some foam tape. And for most of my cards this time, I'm following the sketches fairly closely. Sometimes I use them just as a beginning inspiration, and then I just kind of do my own thing. But for this set of cards, I really did stick closer to the sketch. So for that final touch, I'm using some more of these enamel dots. And then as an afterthought, I did add some Nuvo glitter drops just in the background on that snowflake pattern paper. So now on to card number 7. This is a sketch from Sweet Sunday. It's number 231. I'm using the red pattern paper with the gold snowflakes for the background, and then some of this muted design with that red writing for the strip that's going to go across the middle of the card. Adding some gold peel-offs, and again, I don't need a piece to go all the way across since it's going to be covered up. I'm just putting that onto my background paper, and then I'll add that on the matted cardstock. And this sketch has 3 of these long banners on that left-hand side. So I'm using some of the mirror cardstock, some of this basic red cardstock, and then some of this pattern paper that has like sheet music on it. I'm going to cut little fishtails on the ends. I'll decide my placement on how I want to layer all 3 of those. Start with the heaviest, the thickest paper, which is this mirror cardstock. Then I'll use just the regular cardstock, and then decided to have that pattern paper as the middle piece. And since that pattern paper is a lot thinner than the cardstock, the very top of that banner kind of would have been drooping off of the paper. I did use just a thin piece of cardstock underneath that very top portion, just so it was nice and even on the card. So now I have a stitched circle die cut in pearlescent paper, and then also this scallop circle die. Go ahead and attach that to my card. And I'm going to use another one of the little image stickers. So sweet little angel. And I had debated about adding some sequins or just some Nuvo drops, but I felt like there was enough going on with this card already. So there is my finished card, and that's card number 7. So now moving on to card number 8. This is a sketch from Sketch Saturday, number 566. So I'm going to use a piece of this acetate that's included in the kit. It has like sheet music printed on it, really light color. And acetate is just like vellum. It's very hard to adhere to the card without the adhesive showing. So I'm laying it on just some white cardstock. That way I'll actually be able to see that design. And then I did add some adhesive where I know I'm going to have an image, so it's going to be covered up. And then another way to make sure that acetate stays in place, I used some peel-offs. So I have the gold peel-offs, and I made sure that the ends went off of the side. That way I could wrap them around, and it's kind of like just using tape. It's taping that acetate in place. So I'll go ahead and layer all of this onto my cardstock and then add it onto a card base. I love all the colors on this card. It's just so beautiful. Have that pattern paper on the inside of the card. And then here is my sweet little image that's from the stamp set. I already went ahead and colored her. I don't do any kind of fancy coloring technique, so just kind of sparing you from watching me color. We use a little gold banner in that upper left-hand corner, and then just for a finishing touch, I decided to use some glossy accents. Because there's this wider strip underneath that image. I just felt like it needed a little something. I decided to skip the sentiment on this card, because I can always add one on the inside. And I'm just going to put a whole row of these little glossy accent bubbles all underneath the little girl. And then I did add just some more onto her little ornament that she's holding. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 8. So now moving on to card number 9. And again, I won't be using a card sketch this time. I have this pattern paper for the background. I've used this one before with all of those green images. And then just to add a little extra detail, I'm going to put some silver peel-offs. I'm switching from the gold, heading to silver this time. Putting 3 of them across the middle of the card. So I have the widest width peel-off first, and then just adding the medium width around it. And since you're not going to see the middle, I did use just some of the smaller pieces for that medium width peel-off. Go ahead and add that onto some green cardstock, put my card front onto a card base. I'll add that little strip of pattern paper on the inside of the card. And now I'm going to use this tree that's included on the stamp set. This is a fun tree. It kind of has like a sketchy design to it. And if you're like me and you don't like to color, I mean, you could color this image, it'd be beautiful, but I don't like to color very often, so I'm going to do some heat embossing on it instead. So I'll treat my paper with some anti-static powder, ink it up using some Versamark ink, and I'm going to be using the Sparkling Snow embossing powder, and this is from Lizi. So I stamped that up twice, got a really good stamped image there. And this is just beautiful. It has white and then also some silver glitter in it. So go ahead and heat set that. And I'm not sure my camera really captured how beautiful this embossing powder is. Now it does have that silver glitter and it will wipe off just slightly. So if you do donate your cards to a hospital, make sure not to use any kind of glitter, because if it comes off, it could be a hazard. And I always try to avoid that. So if I know I have any bit of glitter on my cards, they won't be going to a place that I donate, especially if they don't want anything with loose glitter. Now for the sentiment, I'm just going to use a white circle die cut, and then I have it matted in some silver cardstock. So this is not from the kit. Again, this is just from my stash. I'm going to pop that up using some foam tape. And I just stamped this one in black this time. I felt like if I used silver, it would have been too much. The sentiment wouldn't have been quite as visible. So I also stamped out the star that's included on the stamp set, colored that really loosely with some yellow Copic marker, since I knew I was going to fussy cut it out. And then just to cover up all those little white edges, I'm using a black marker and just going all around the edge. I'm going to pop that using just a thin foam square. And it's pretty small, so I had to cut even my small square in half. Put that on the top of my tree. And then I needed to decorate my tree. So I'm using some Nuvo Red Berry crystal drops. Just adding them all over the tree, kind of like berries or maybe ornaments. I think that pop of red really made a beautiful look on this card. And then just to add a little extra sparkle, I'm using the Nuvo glitter drops in the white blizzard and just putting one tiny little dot onto each of those little scalloped, round scallop points. I'm not sure what you call those. And then a little extra sparkle, I pulled out the Wink of Stella glitter pen and added it to my star. So there is my finished card, and that is card number 9. So now moving on to my final card. This is card number 10. I'm using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches, number 311. So I have a tone-on-tone pattern paper for the background, along with some more of this gold snowflake pattern paper. So I just have a little thin strips going on the outside, and then I'll put this tone-on-tone pattern paper and just center that right on top. I'm going to pull out some of the gold peel-offs. Just going to run one on each edge of that pattern paper. I'll just use my craft knife to cut off the end. This way it gives it a little extra separation without adding any more cardstock. So I'll put my card front onto a card base. And then I used another piece of white pearlescent paper, layered that on this red cardstock, and I'll adhere that to my card. And this is where I'm going to add one of the sticker images. So another one of these sweet little angels, and she's holding onto a star. And then I'll use another one of the stickers with the sentiment Silent Night. Put that right onto some more of this gold mirror cardstock, fussy cut just that thin border all around it. And then I'll pop it up using some foam dimensional tape. It's so nice to have all these little image stickers included in this paper pad. It's great when you want to just pop together a real quick card. But then there's also that stamp set if you'd rather color some of the images yourself. So just add that sentiment in the lower right hand corner. And then I cut out some small banners to put in that upper left-hand corner. One of them out of the same red cardstock, and then the other out of this gold mirror paper. I'm just adhering them using some score tape just to make sure they stay in place. Put that pattern paper strip on the inside of the card, and then just one final touch. I'm using some of the Nuvo glitter drops. Use the white blizzard color. So there is my finished card, and that is card number 10. Now here's just a quick recap of the 10 cards I made using Love from Lizi's The Magic of Christmas 8x8 paper collection. With my recent Love from Lizi kit, I was given a second paper pad and stamp set. So I'm doing a giveaway for both items. I'm sorry, this is for U.S. residents only, simply because of the shipping cost. To qualify for the giveaway, leave a comment telling me what type of card you make the most. Example, Christmas, thank you, birthday, etc. I will select a winner on Monday, September 30th by replying to the winner's comment. If you just want to buy the paper and stamp set, I do have a link in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.